leader Ed Davey with us now. Proper kicking. What happened?
Well, I think this will send shockwaves through the British political system. This was Liberal Democrat victory, one of our best ever by-election victories, and if it was repeated across the south of England, literally dozens of Conservative MPs would lose their seats to the Liberal Democrats. And, you know, we were finding on the doorstep, and I came here 16 times, I talked to hundreds of people, we were finding they've been taken for granted. They feel that the Conservative Party isn't listening to them. Many of them aren't very happy with Boris Johnson. And I think in areas like this, it's really clear that it's the Liberal Democrats who can beat the Conservatives. And boy, did we do that last night.
You certainly did. You absolutely trounced some 30-point swing. But we both know, we've both been in politics a long time, and that's very rarely replicated in a general election.
Well, first of all, it was a huge swing. I mean, people talked about Hartlepool being a big swing. This was more than almost double Hartlepool's swing to us. So this is absolutely huge. And I think people will need to take notice of this. But also, it actually builds on a trend too. In the local elections in the south of England, in places like Oxfordshire, Cambridgeshire, Hertfordshire, Surrey, Wiltshire, Liberal Democrats made quite big gains off the Conservatives. So this is part of a trend. And I've been pointing out to people that everyone's talking about the red wall in the north. They should think about the blue wall in the south. And it's that blue wall that Liberal Democrats breached last night. We can knock it down in the south with Liberal Democrats taking lots of seats off the Conservatives. I think there's been a growing swell towards us in these sorts of areas. And so last night, while it was, I have to say, it was much better than I had expected, it was part of that trend where Liberal Democrats are beating Conservatives across the south.
It's a yellow brick in a blue wall at this stage. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Mr. Davey. But what I would like to ask you is whether you entered into a pact with Labour in order to trounce the Tories last night.
No. We campaigned on Liberal Democrat policies. We campaigned on our strong environmental record, our desire to make sure that planning policy, for example, was a big issue here, is led by the community, by people who have a voice, rather than the Conservatives' propositions, which is to take power away from people and give it to developers. You know, Liberal Democrats believe we need more affordable homes, greener homes, we need more homes for our young people, but the planning reforms being put forward by the Conservatives would, as Theresa May said, result in the wrong homes in the wrong places. So, you know, that planning reforms then linked to our strong environmental campaigning, I think is what tilted the balance for many Conservative voters. Because there were many voters who'd always voted Conservative, but last night they voted Liberal Democrat. And I think there's a trend growing there. So there may be one yellow brick in the wall as of last night. There's many more to follow.
What's wrong with a Lib-Lab pact ahead of the next general election? The Tories have, you know, if one looks back, I was looking back earlier on this morning about how many times the Conservatives have been in power as opposed to any other party. They trounce all the rest. So although you're having your moment of glory today, what's wrong with having a Lib-Lab pact in order to be a better opposition to the government?
Well, very different parties. Liberal Democrats want a fairer, greener, more caring country, but Liberal Democrats are mainly fighting the Conservatives. So in the south of England, where we're particularly strong in parts of London, actually in parts of some of the suburbs, in places like Manchester, places like Hazel, Grove, Cheadle, it's the Liberal Democrats who are competing against the Conservatives, and Labour are not very strong there, so it really wouldn't help. You know, Liberal Democrats, I believe, are recovering. We are showing, as a result of last night, that we are the ones to beat the Conservatives in so many areas. And, you know, our message of campaigning and talking to people, you know, we're great campaigners, we're great community politicians, and because we listen to people, they do feel that we respond to their concerns in the way that Conservatives increasingly aren't. I think many people, certainly in Chesham and Amersham, but I think across the south of England, feel the Conservatives have almost forgotten them, take them for granted. They feel ignored by them, and Liberal Democrats are filling that vacuum.
So, Ed, how concerned are you about a story on the front page of the Times this morning that says 2,500 VIPs are going to be allowed to come to the United Kingdom without having to quarantine from UEFA and FIFA to take part or witness, watch, spectate on the Euro 2020s? How can that be fair?
Although I haven't read the story, from what you just said, it does not sound fair at all. And, you know, it's part of the way this Conservative government operates. There's one rule for their friends, another rule for the rest of us. You know, we saw that with Dominic Cummings, didn't we, during the pandemic, who broke all the rules and didn't pay the price. And, you know, so often with this Conservative government, if you're friendly with them, you get special favours. That is not the way to do politics. And actually here in Chesham and Amersham, we did see a number of people really cross with Boris Johnson, feel that he and his government aren't just out of touch, but they're just listening to developers who give them lots of money. They're listening to the people who got huge amounts of money through contracts during the pandemic. There's a dissatisfaction with Boris Johnson, which I don't think the polls have yet picked up, but we were picking up here on the doorsteps in Chesham and Amersham. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Liberal Democrats had such a good victory here.
Fantastic win for you by any measure, Sir Ed. What you're going to have is your celebratory breakfast. 3 shredded wheat?
I haven't thought about breakfast. I've been talking to people in the media. But you know, we're going to have a celebration, obviously, because it's such a big win. You know, it's not often that you get a 30% swing. I mean, I've got to look at the history books. I think it's the biggest ever Liberal Democrat by-election victory, which I think speaks volumes. I think it says that, you know, where we go out and campaign, I came here 16 times to this by-election, talked to hundreds of people, where we talk to people, people listen to us, like our message, and see how different we are from the Conservatives. And I think we're going to keep plugging away with our message of a fairer, greener, more caring country. We're going to be plugging away at saying, look, you know, if you want the homes to be affordable, to be green, and the homes for young people, there's a different approach from the Conservatives. And I think messages like that in areas like this will resonate, and I think Liberal Democrats can win many, many more seats off the Conservatives.
See, I was just looking for a flippant one-liner, but you were a politician right through to the tape, weren't you, Sir Ed? Thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning. Thanks a lot.